Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second Zoominar, Back on Your Feet for Communities and Welfare. NPDC's Back on Our Feet plan is about helping households and businesses hit by the COVID-19 economic storm. The NPDC have a proposed package of projects worth about $20 million, and we're now asking for feedback on these. And you can see the details on the project, and we'll put the details in the box. Good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Harris, and I'm going to be your independent facilitator for today's session. A couple of things I just want to point you out to. So you'll notice at the top right-hand corner, you have something that says either speaker view or gallery view. Please toggle between the two, and you can either see all of the panelists or the individual that is speaking at that moment in time. Also, along the bottom, you'll also notice a couple of other things that I want to point you out to. The first one is the chat box. If I could all ask you to open the chat box and click down where it says to all panelists and attendees, and just put your name and where you're from in the box. This will give us an idea and an indication as to who is on the session today. You'll also notice there's something called Q&A. So this is a very interactive session. If you could please click on the Q&A, and what it will do is it will give you a pop-up box. We are really encouraging you, and this session is all about questions that we want to ask our panelists today. So please, as we go through, type the questions in that box, and we can go through them, and I can ask the panelists those. Also, throughout the session, there's a couple of polls that we're going to be doing. I will launch these at various different times. Again, they will pop up on your screen, and please just vote accordingly as to where and what you're thinking. So could I please hand over to David, who's just going to go through a couple of slides this morning. David.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui. Welcome everyone. Thank you for your attendance this morning. What we'd like to do today is we'd like to get your thoughts around the Back on Our Feet project, which the council have aptly named the GBOOF, which is getting ourselves back on our feet. We're helping households and businesses hit by COVID economic storm. The yearly budget revised because of the economic shock includes a $5.4 million income drop for the council. And it is a proposed rates increase of 2.5% for the average home. The total rates rise of 3.95%, down from 4.75 and our initial annual plan of 6.47. Our Back on Our Feet plans worth about $20 million, and already in place are an $8 million rates relief package and $165,000 for Venture Taranaki to help small to medium businesses. Next slide, please. The Back on Our Feet now, basically there's 5 areas that we're concentrating on today. Buying local for NPDC contracts, the procurement contracts for NPDC. A boost for tradies via our Warmer and Greener Homes scheme, which is equivalent of about, or can be up to $7.5 million. Slashing fees for businesses worth $1.3 million. Funding for grassroots community groups. We're looking at $450,000 for this, and helping our main street building owners with a $50,000 package for facade and earthquake strengthening. Continuing to buy local and giving Taranaki contractors an advantage when bidding for NPDC contracts. This gives Taranaki contractors and suppliers a helping hand, of course. Adopting the procurement recovery plan makes it easier and more efficient for contractors to do business with NPDC. It ensures processes promote local and economic recovery, and more than 3/4 of our suppliers are already local anyway, so we just want to make sure that we maintain those relationships with them. The cost of this, the cost will be absorbed into existing contract budgets. There is obviously the number of our jobs that we are trying to move forward, so they're already in our long-term plan. We're moving some of those forward to get the bigger jobs up and running, and obviously there's some of the smaller jobs that we will be delaying for a year or two. Next slide, thanks. Our warmer, greener homes. It expands our existing home insulation loan scheme. It covers solar power, heating, hot water systems, rainwater tanks, grey water systems, ventilation systems, charging ports for electric cars or home gardening packages. And it's up to $10,000 in loans. So you can take that loan out over 9 years. And if it's over 9 years, there's a 3.15% interest, and it's interest free over 5 years. It's estimated that we will borrow $7.5 million depending on the uptake, but that's what the council is looking at doing. Thank you. Next slide, thanks. Slashing dropping fees to support businesses. For licence fees, we're cutting it to $1 to help the hospitality sector. On-street dining, temporary road closures or events in parks and fees will be axed. 2 hours free processing for our resource consents. Free engineering plans included with the subdivision applications. And first $1,000 of building consent processes fees will be wiped. Delays in payments for property developers when land is subsidised. This is approximately about $1.3 million worth of work. Thank you. And more and faster money for grassroots groups. So the council has added to the grassroots funding pool, and this is about 450K. Or 450,000, sorry. So it's additional round of grants. Groups are those which support vulnerable, especially during the COVID-19 groups. We're fully aware that a lot of our grassroots sports clubs and associations have really taken a hit in terms of funding, and in particular along with, I suppose, with their leagues and those types of things. So this is really to help our clubs make sure that they don't go under and make sure that we can keep them afloat over these challenging times. And finally, keeping our main streets and buildings looking good. Topping up shop builders owners so they can improve premises. Help building owners with $1,000 grant for outside structural or interior works. It keeps work coming for our property professionals, architects and surveyors. Owners of earthquake-prone buildings will get an extra 18 months for their engineering reports to be processed. This is approximately about 50K's worth of work. I believe that's the last slide. So they're the 5 things. Now, we just need to remember that these are up for debate. We want your feedback on these things. They aren't set in stone. These are ideas that the council have come up with. And the reason that we are obviously holding this webinar today is to get your thoughts and hopefully listen to some ideas that you guys may have. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, David. So please keep the questions coming through into the Q&A box like I suggested before. If I could ask all panelists to just hover over their mute button as I come to them. It seems like we've got a little bit of feedback. I think, David, it might be somebody in your office just next to you that there might be some kind of feedback coming through. There's just been a point that's come through. The entire Sustainable Homes Voluntary Targeted Rate Scheme is fantastic. Its comprehensiveness is outstanding, and I understand it has unanimous council support. Just the first question, will the MP District Council please undertake a feasibility study as to the need and value of establishing a city mission type service in New Plymouth? Marie, can I come to you first on that one, please, if you want to unmute yourself?
It's not something at this point that we have talked about, but it definitely has merit. We're hearing every day that there are so many people in need, so I'm sure council will be open to any discussion with this.
Okay. Dinnie, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I suppose for me, just some clarification around what do you mean by a city mission?
Okay.
It's hard for me to comment if I haven't got any substance or context to it.
Agreed on that. Question that's come through from Vicky. Don't appear to be a lot of clubs on this Zoominar. Are sports clubs able to access funds via Sport T? David, can I come to you, please, on that one?
Apologies for the feedback. There's something going on behind me. I know that the government have provided a reasonably substantial package that Sport Taranaki can access and have got access to. So clubs can go to Sport Taranaki, but the council is another avenue for them to explore. It really is, the council one is around youth sport and youth engagement. So if clubs have a large, I guess, youth base, then definitely come to the council, because the council has funds for those clubs. We're very aware that you've lost money through subs and obviously through funders like New Zealand Community Trust. So that's what that fund at the council is for.
Okay. Tony, any other funds that you're available for that sports clubs can access at all?
Yeah, I probably tend to take more of a helicopter view during this period. My thoughts are more about the funding agencies working more collaboratively together. And we have a number of funding agencies here in our province, with TET, with NPDC, with TSB Community Trust, New Zealand Community Trust. And as Councillor Bublitz just said, that there is something in the vicinity of 235 million coming through from Sport New Zealand to filter through, and the detail hasn't come through on that yet. So while NPDC do have some funding available, and it is a small cog in a big wheel, my thoughts more would be for the funding groups to get together and work collaboratively, because the last thing you want is one one sporting group running around 6 or 7 different funding agencies. So my view moving forward would be to promote a forum with all the funders and how they work collaboratively together, of which NPDC would be part of.
And Tony, would you be suggesting that it would be independent or something that would be facilitated by the NPDC?
Well, it can be facilitated by a number of people. If it was sporting, I would think that Sport Taranaki would be the perfect facilitator for that, of which NPDC would be a participant.
Okay, so somebody's just put in the chat box, there is already a Taranaki Funders Forum. So Marcia, if I could just ask you to just put the details of that on the chat box, so that if anybody wants to have access to it, they can do. Marie, coming to you, a couple of similar questions that have come through. What are the set criteria for grassroots group support, e.g. operational funds or project base? And can you give more information about grassroots funding, for example, the criteria? Just unmute you. If you could just unmute yourself, Marie. Okay, Marie, could you just unmute yourself, Marie? There we go.
Apologies. Grassroots funding. I spent a decade on community funding with council, and there's a wonderful opportunity for grassroots funding and for those small groups to come to council now through community funding. Council have put in an extra round and more funding, and this is a great way for small clubs to come with their projects to council and apply for this funding.
Could you, Marie, could you give some details about the criteria for people?
I think as long as the club is viable and they can prove that this is a community-based project for the good of the community, I think that most people presenting to council do meet the criteria.
Okay. And Dinnie, what would be the process of people kind of going through that application route?
Yeah, cheers, Adam. So part of the application process for anyone out there, and it's not just for sporting groups, like let's clarify, it's actually non-for-profit organisations can apply as well. And I've been working with Callum, who's part of the community project team. And part of the application, if anyone is interested in considering applying, the council staff will actually help them with the application process. Which is really good. So they'll sit down with them, they'll take you through the process, and they'll ensure that the application is quantified, qualified, and it goes through the process. They'll also let you know the procedures and how long it'll take before it gets approved. So it's an amazing initiative, and it's one that all community organisations, groups should definitely benefit on. And
whereabouts would you signpost people to, Dinnie, to get that ball going?
So you can just go onto their website, just the NPDC website. It's quite tough to navigate, but also you can contact your local councillors as well. They'll be able to provide you with the information. Just give us an email, which is on the websites as well.
Fantastic. Tony, coming to you, and it's similar sort of vein. Are groups able to apply to this fund more than once? At the moment, do you just get one bite for one project only?
Historically, there has been some funding that's where they apply for annual funding, which is rolled over. My personal belief is that in times like we're going to go through coming out of COVID, I have a fundamental belief is that there's going to be a huge number of volunteer, community and sporting groups looking for funding in the short term. On the other hand, that a lot of the funding agencies, their investment return will be down, so you're going to have increased demand with less income. So my fundamental belief would be give a little to a lot rather than a lot to a little. And you know, my personal feeling is annual funding at this stage until we get back on our feet.
Brilliant, thank you. David, coming to you, just before I do, just in the chat box, Marcy has put in the details about the forum, and Lauren's also put in details with the web link as well. I'm going to give one more minute on the couple of the questions that are in the poll just going at the moment. David, coming to you, has the NPDC undertaken a community asset map or plan to?
Sorry, I missed that. A community
asset map, so looking at all the different groups that sit within the region.
I'm not sure if they have or not. It's a really good idea if they haven't, but I can't answer that one way or another. I'm sorry.
Okay, Marie, any known knowledge on that one at all, or thoughts on whether it should be done?
Yes, as far as I know, it has been done. We could inquire back through the community funding team to see if they're talking about community groups, or are we looking at council assets? Not quite sure.
I sense from reading the question it's more to do with the community groups, etc.
Yes, I think there is a registrar from memory.
Okay, Dinnie, you're nodding your head. Is that something that you're aware of?
I'm just agreeing. I think it's a great idea.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. Right, so Dinnie, just sticking with you, do the planners see any way to tweak the sustainable homes package to upgrade the coldest, dampest homes to get those multiple benefits of better health, warmer homes, reduced use and reduced energy bills? Just give us some indication as to some of the things that the NPDC are looking at and things that maybe you wouldn't cover.
Yeah, I suppose part of this conversation around housing and warmer homes and all that sort of stuff, it's also like working in collaboration like MSD and other government agencies, because it's quite difficult, and I can only go off the information that's provided, but there are a lot of experts out there that can make some recommendations towards us. And I think what's really important is, in order for us to make educated decisions, is our ability to not only receive the feedback, but also work with those organisations like NZ Housing, any other government agencies, to put together a strong plan. And I think it's vitally important that the community get involved in giving us this feedback. I mean, we bear the responsibility, but at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're reaching out to those sectors that can help.
Great. So as Dinnie said, this is a great opportunity to be giving your feedback now, both via questions or also in the chat, with regards to what are your thoughts on what maybe NPDC should be looking at. David, thoughts on things that have been looked at with regards to the Warmer Home Scheme? I
looked at this a little bit in more depth, I guess, last week, and when it first came out, it was all around there was a lot of talk just around the solar panels and the solar energy side of things, which obviously is a part of it, but you can also get up to $7,500 for instance, for grey water storage, for gardening. So if you want to be a sustainable gardener and you can potentially put an orchard in, there's money for that. So in terms of being sustainable, it's not just around warmer, less damp houses. You can also, back to the housing, you can also get double glazing put in. There's a number of things. The insulation is obviously part of that as well. So there's more, it's a wider scope, I guess, around what we're looking at in terms of our sustainability, which I think is awesome. So, you know, in particular around, and I wasn't aware until last week, that the sustainable gardens and the orchards, and being able to get a grant for something like that, I think is really cool. And in particular with our Tapuairoa and our 2050 roadmap, that's kind of leading in the correct direction there.
Okay, so a couple of comments in the chat box. Terrific answer, thanks, Dinnie. Collaboration with other agencies seems excellent. We need some systems thinking. Also, feedback regarding the housing. Ramp up your relationship with Wise Better Homes. These guys are all also employ local unemployed, of which numbers have soared. Let's assist, get these folk back onto work. Tony, coming to you, are you aware of Wise Better Homes, and is that something, a relationship that could be started or increased moving forward?
Yes, I am aware of Wise. As you know, I live in Waithera, and Wise is based in Waithera. It's been going a long time. It's a not-for-profit. And they have been doing a lot over a number of years. So with this uptake, it's, you know, for Wise, hopefully they become a registered supplier of the NPDC. But this program is about insulation, as Councillor Bublitz has said. It is about double glazing. It is about heat pumps. So it's all encompassing. It's not just insulation. And if we're going to be really sincere about looking after our local tradies, well, then I would like to think Wise are a big part of that, because they do employ our local people, and it's a local-based company.
Great. Marie, coming to you, slightly similar question. Could the lowering of fees to property developers be conditional on greener developments?
That's an interesting one. It's not something that we have considered. So just repeat it, that it would be...
Could the lowering of fees to property developers be conditional on greener developments?
I'm not sure that we would be making it a condition, but I'm sure that we would encourage greener homes. I think we all agree that we live in a climate that we tend to be taking it all for granted, and so I think our homes should be greener, and I think that we should look to building them more ecologically. So I definitely think that that's something, but whether we would make it conditional, I think it would be optional. Okay,
Dinnie, thoughts on that?
Oh, I love the idea. Now, I think that's why it's important to gain this kind of feedback. I think incentivising property builders, property owners to be more environmentally friendly. We can already see, just for example, up in Auckland, how low their water levels are. And I think if we're looking at sustainability moving forward, if we have these initiatives moving forward, I think the feedback that we get is to such that it prompts us to think differently. And I think with this opportunity, it allows us to think differently. And if it means incentivising, then I don't have an issue with it personally.
Incentivising.
Yeah, David, somebody suggested be bold and make it conditional. Thoughts?
Look, I think what we need to remember is this is a COVID response package. And what we're offering is I guess, a little bit of help to our tradies and the like in the immediate future. I think down the line, it's a really good idea in terms of incentivising and even making some of the building codes, I guess, around that, making sure that they apply to some green or some environmental friendly standards. But for the immediate future, I believe that this is about providing support to our building industry. So I think that if we then start making them, putting in specific, I guess, things for their homes to make them greener, then that might cost them in the immediate short term. So down the line, I think it's an excellent idea, but for the immediate future and for the COVID response package, I think that it's just a little bit too short a time frame to do something like that.
Okay. Tony?
Yeah, look, I tend to agree with Councillor Bublitz at this point in time. This is a COVID response package, but certainly would support more greener building as we move forward. Probably needs to be driven by the building industry and the regulators. And I think that that's where it will come from as we move forward and as the world changes, and hopefully sooner rather than later. But it needs to come from a nationwide regulatory organisation. What we're looking at now, and let's not fool ourselves, we've only been 8 weeks into COVID. We're going to be 3 to 5 years to get out. So let's focus on what's best just for now, but with also keeping an eye on the future moving forward.
Fantastic. Please keep the questions coming in, both in the Q&A box, but also the comments in the chat. I've got a couple more to go through. Just sticking with this theme, in support of the previous question with regards to greener developments, would include co-housing type developments, papakaiki, which incorporate lower environmental footprints in multiple ways and encourage community resilience by their very design. Marie, just coming to you with regards to kind of the shovel-ready packages. I know that buying local, there's a proposal about having a weighting system with regards to local organisations. Do you think that there should also be one with environmental aspect? Or picking up on David's point, is that too short, too soon now? But maybe it's something that NPDC could consider moving forward.
I agree. I don't think it's something we can look at now. Our time frame is too short. But as far as local tradies, definitely Council has made it quite clear that for all our contracts, we will be encouraging local tradies and looking at their contracts very favourably. We want to keep our district in work, and this is Council's aim with making it, making our homes warmer and greener. This comes back to keeping local tradies in work as well.
Tony?
Yeah, just moving forward, in regard to that building green, we need to take into account that we're getting a $300 million new hospital that is getting planned. Those are the sort of projects that I believe that they need to be looking at really hard right from the get-go, because it is a planned, staged approach. It is a major construction job, and I'd be looking very keen to see what they're doing there in that planned approach in regard to green building in that hospital.
Brill. Dinnie, just coming to you. I'm going to stick on this theme because there's a few more questions coming through. Would Council be interested in linking up its objective to electrify its fleet to set up carpooling, for example, via an app, with local community groups who need cars for food banks, etc., sharing transport infrastructure and saving on running and ownership of everyone's costs?
I attended a seminar regards to a New Zealand-owned company who were wanting to do exactly that. And I know that obviously there's been conversations with council in terms of electrifying their fleet. So these conversations are already happening. How does it work in response with where we are now currently with COVID-19? What measures are we going to take in place health and safety wise for these procedures? I work on the road quite a bit, and when you go to visit the shops as well, every time you've got to have sanitized, you've got a checkpoint. So I suppose the anomaly is, how do you make sure that you have the correct health and safety procedures if you're going to have that shared travel? And I think the concept is there, the idea has been talked about, but where we are currently in this situation, I don't see that in the not too distant future for that to be, because of the health and safety aspect.
Brilliant. David, Tony, Marie, similar sort of views or anything different? David?
No, I mean, everything's going to go through that lens at the moment for the next however long, the COVID lens, I guess, in terms of health and safety. You know, they talk about, I suppose, shared transport at the moment in Taranaki or in New Plymouth District as the bus service, and getting on in buses. And I know that there's been a massive push in the Let's Go program to try and get people out of their cars and in different forms of transport. I guess with the bus, there's not many people on there at the moment, so there'll be plenty of room in terms of space to be your 2 metre distance apart. But yeah, the situation that we're in at the moment, I think the health and safety will come first. So down the line, you know, again, these are areas, I suppose, looking at the 2050 roadmap again, you know, these are areas that we need to look into a little bit more deeper, but this is around immediate responses. So I don't think there'll be something that we could keep going in the next 2 or 3 months.
Okay, thank you. Comment came through. I also support the city mission idea in the short term. New Plymouth needs to work with Community Housing Action and the Women's Centre to track and directly support New Plymouth's growing homeless population. Marie, what's being done with regards to the homeless during this period, especially as we kind of go into winter?
I think working with the institutions out there, I don't know that council particularly has been working with the homeless in this direction, but keeping our homes warm. We've got a very damp climate. I think if they can apply for an interest-free loan for 5 years to insulate their homes, get some ventilation into their homes. Our homes are wet and they're damp, and we need to be very, we need to encourage people to come on board with this. There's a $7.5 million loan to help people get better homes. And I think that this is something that council is hoping they will take up in the next few months.
Great. Tony?
I see the council's role not as leading, but supporting the agencies who are involved in that field. And there are a number of them around doing an outstanding job. And as we know, without those groups and volunteers, we would certainly struggle. So for me, it's the council supporting those. And we've heard some initiatives today with greener homes. We've heard from community funding. So that's where I believe the council's role is to help resource those organisations that are working in that field and be a link as part of it. Because the last thing you want to do is start having all these silos and reinventing the wheel. So for me, council's role is supporting those agencies that are working in the field with resource and support with funding and so forth. So that's where I see it.
David, coming to you, somebody's put, doing this survey, and I'm assuming this is the online survey, why does using Taranaki contractors lead to an increased cost for homeowners? Is NPDC bidding not competitive?
Why does it, sorry, the question is, why does it increase the cost to homeowners?
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether that is the actual case. I guess what we are putting in place is that some of the local procurement contracts may be a little bit more expensive because I guess the companies are a little bit smaller, their overheads are greater, they can't absorb costs like the national companies. I guess you'd look at Downer, for instance, who's a national company, and they can absorb a lot more costs. So the reason they get the procurement is because their price is better, I guess. And what will happen if we go locally, the cost may be a little bit higher. And are we, I guess the question is, are we as a region willing to accept that we'll be taking higher costs in terms of procurement to engage our local community and make sure that we're giving the work back to them? So the question really is, are we happy to pay a little bit more for our local contractors rather than going national?
Thank you. A couple more comments that are coming through with regards to the support of building green sustainability, affordable and state homes, not just encouraging the private property developers. Dinnie, coming to you, has NPDC engaged with their treaty partners on the back On Our Feet plan? Have NPDC explored delivering with their treaty partners to deliver the plan?
Firstly, whoever wrote that question, what a beautiful question to ask. I'd like to know the same thing, actually, because when we look at partnership, and here's the thing, post-COVID, when we actually look at partnership, we have iwi who have settled right here in Taranaki, and we have iwi who are actually being proactive and investing back into the local economy through the Nova Tower, through the police station, through the courthouse. They are willing to invest. There's a subdivision being created in Fitzroy that is iwi-led. There are opportunities to partner, to really partner, to cement that partnership and live up to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. So for me, being in this position, I get to ask these questions to our council staff. And what I can say is that there is an openness and willingness from the council staff. I think with these fresh eyes with fellow councillors, I think, it's going to require courage to be able to step forward. But I do believe partnering with iwi on initiatives is part of the collaborative process moving forward for our region.
And Dinnie, I mean, forums like this are a great opportunity for people to be sharing their ideas, etc. From a more formal perspective, where and how is the best way to be giving that feedback to you?
So we've obviously got, with the feedback that we've got Te Huinga o Taumata. So Te Huinga o Taumata is a committee set up with councillors and iwi representatives, and they're used as a filter. They make recommendations, they ask some strong questions with the council staff, and it's to develop, to make sure that they are doing the appropriate steps and following through measures with tikanga Māori, which is it's important because it's in our legislation. So in terms of these partnerships, in terms of working towards a more sustainable future, Māori have been leading in terms of environmental, and now they're in a position to actually help make a difference. And there will always be this conditioned historic fear, but I want everybody who is on this call to know and understand that we are here, and we are here to actually proactively help and assist, and we want to be part of the solution.
Thank you. Tony, thoughts, comments?
Well, I just probably spin it around a little bit, really, and look at the contribution of iwi and hapu during COVID, things that I noticed and heard, that they rang their people to see if they're okay. They delivered food parcels. They, in conjunction with the police, manned checkpoints. The statistics that came out of those was quite horrendous in regard to the amount of travel. So in regard to have we consulted them, I thought they took the initiative in a lot of areas that we could have followed. I know out here in Waitara, the number of food parcels delivered to the elders that couldn't go to the supermarkets and all of that was staggering. So I applaud that. I think once again, as we move forward, with this recovery. I think it is a partnership. I'm kind of hoping that with work, with the projects that are coming up, and I use Mount Messenger for one, that if that gets the go-ahead, I would certainly hope that Ngāti Tama have negotiated with NZTA in regard to the settlement, that there's employment opportunities in that construction site. I would certainly hope that the hospital construction, we work together to get our people, whether they be Māori, Pākehā, the opportunity to get into work. Because as we know, it's been projected, we're going to have 5,500 unemployed coming out of this. So we need to work together. There's some initiatives that we need to work together with iwi and hapu for the benefit of everybody. So I think it's an exciting time moving forward as a collective.
Great. David, coming to you. Why is the 50,000 allocated to Main Street building owners? This is an extremely small amount, $1,000 per grant, aimed at property owners, most of whom will have more than adequate.
Ooh, most will have more than adequate. I think that shop owners in town are struggling. I went into the CBD and maybe not the bottom buildings where the shops are, but above the shops, there are empty spaces that are costing owners quite a substantial amount of money each year that they're not filled. So is 50,000 enough? I'm not sure. I guess that's what we're trying to get feedback on. I think it's a really good start, and I guess if it gives the opportunity for a smaller shop to maybe improve their facade somehow, maybe give them a little bit of a hand, maybe something that they were thinking about doing but couldn't afford to do, and it gives them the ability to now do that, and that helps their business, then that's a positive, I believe. Not sure whether it's enough or not. I guess shop owners need to feedback on that, and shop owners and also building owners need to feedback and tell us whether that's enough or not.
Okay, thank you. Marie, coming to you, but a few more questions come back in about the community groups. Can you tell a bit more about the support for CBD in towns, the Kaitaki Community Board Community Plan 2017 for Rakato, Amata and Okora laid out each community's priorities? Will the council look into those?
I'm sure they will be. We're looking at main streets throughout our district. That will include Okato, Okra, Inglewood, Waitra, and we're looking to improve our CBDs going forward. This $1,000 grant for retailers to improve their shops, it's only a small amount, but I think it's something that they may be able to improve their shop frontages by painting them or by putting some greenery outside. I think all of this has got to be welcomed. All business owners will be struggling at this particular time, and if we can encourage people to shop local by keeping our retailers and our business areas looking fabulous, then why would you want to leave Taranaki? Shop local, stay in Taranaki. Let's keep our city and our small communities vibrant.
Just piggybacking on that, is the CBD fund, is that available to everybody within the CBD, all businesses, or just those with shop frontage?
This one we're particularly looking at, about the 50k Main Street one, is open to retailers and shop frontages, but council at the moment has a project for our main streets, and that will be coming out in the next few months. But of course the pandemic, COVID virus has sort of overtaken everyone, so things are a little uncertain and untimely. Not quite sure when this is going to happen, but it's certainly in the pipeline.
Okay, Dinnie, coming to you. The council has been quite selective in what the community can provide feedback on. However, there has been application for significant central government support for shovel-ready projects. COVID has highlighted some serious deficiencies in local amenities, which we have all relied on during this crisis, particularly walking and cycling. How has Council analysed and responded to these deficiencies and made the post-COVID response not through a pre-COVID lens and ensure fairness, equality across all of our communities in support of the community wellness?
Okay, it's I can see Councillor Bublitz having a good laugh. A lot to dissect, really, and if you can just summarise the question so I can make sure, because I want to give an educated answer, but it's a lot to take in for me to answer that specifically. So can you, Adam, can you just repeat either the last part or try and specify the question?
Yeah, so I think for me, they're saying COVID has highlighted some deficiencies around certain areas. The lens that the council are looking at through this period of time, are they looking just for a short period of time, or actually are they looking at the medium to longer term as to how and what we should be investing in?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adam. So first of all, this response back on our feet is short term. So it's immediate. We want this to happen immediately. But then we've also got medium to long-term plans, which is coming up in June with regards to our annual plan and our long-term plan. But effective immediately, our priority and concern as a council was how do we relieve pressure immediately? What can we do to, I suppose, lead at the forefront with these initiatives of shopping local? And, you know, I endorse and I support and I promote us hiring local contractors, hiring local tradies, these types of contracts, because that money comes back into our local economy if we support them. So I would encourage that for more of our local suppliers to be used through the NPDC. But in terms of this response, back on your feet, in terms of our community giving feedback, it's for the immediate short term.
David, thoughts on that? I think the second part of the question was also around the focus towards the community wellness with regards to walking and cycling, etc. I appreciate it's not necessarily short term, but maybe what medium to long term is being thought on from that perspective.
Well, I mean, I think that what we need to remember is that the shovel-ready projects and the projects that the council have applied for are all really long-term projects. They're big projects. There's $360 million worth of pipes that we need to fix. There's the water treatment station or water treatment plant that they're looking at putting hydrogen power to, and they're all medium to long-term projects, I believe, and they're things that are required for our region to continue to thrive 20, 30, 40 years down the track. In terms of your walking, one of the shovel-ready projects that we actually did apply for was the Taranaki Traverse. So we put in a bid to get money so we can complete the Taranaki Traverse up around the Monga. So in terms of that specific question, that's something that the council has done and obviously see as important for our district going forward.
Great, thank you. We've still got time for a few more questions. Please put them in the Q&A box, and any thoughts or comments, please put into the chat box. Tony, coming to you, will council be reviewing our rate structure to hopefully reduce the fixed charge, bringing NPDC more in line with other councils and shifting the rates burden from low-income residents to those better able to pay?
That's an interesting one. When you talk of rates, it's trying to keep the rates as low as you can, while the expectation comes in for a lot of things. So it's really the appetite that people have to pay. If you look at rates around the country, I think, you know, we were going to look at 6.8% prior to COVID. We've got it down to 3.95 for the average house. That is $1.14 per week. And there is rates relief packages available for those who are struggling. And they've been well publicised. Moving forward, you're always trying to balance the needs as against the rates increase, as against the appetite of what people are prepared to pay. Because at the end of the day, we could have 0 rate rises. The services would drop, our infrastructure would get worse, and at the end of the day, we end up passing that debt on to the next generation. So we have a duty to try and maintain what we've got, so we're not doing that, to give a standard of living that we're comfortable with, and being frugal and fiscally sensitive about it. And as I say, for those people who are struggling, go to the website. There's 3 or 4 different options if you're struggling in your rates. And one that's come straight out for everybody is that there's no penalties on rates from the 30th of May for a month. There are a rates holiday for up to a year. So at the end of the day, the other thing is that rates pay for 55% of council's operational costs. The rest of the money has to be found from somewhere else as well. So the total rate take doesn't pay for all of our costs. 45% of the costs come from other avenues. So it is a fine balancing act, and it's one that we need to be consciously aware of all the time moving forward.
Thank you, Tony. If I could alert the attendees to the chat box, there's a link on there, which is the 5-minute survey. For all those people that enter or put your details in there, you have the opportunity to win $500 worth of vouchers to be spent locally. So please encourage you to continue the conversation and be giving your views and opinions across. Marie, coming to you, will council be collaborating with community housing action, for example, the Women's Centre and other frontline emergency housing advocacy groups, to begin tracking New Plymouth's growing rate of homelessness?
Through the community funding group, council is already working with several organisations in the city. I think again it comes back to council will cooperate and certainly work with the organisations in the city to do this, but I don't see it as our role to be leaders with this. And there is money available for these organisations, and as I said earlier, we've increased the money, we've increased the rounds. They can make an application and certainly come and talk to council. We are well aware that the months going ahead are very uncertain for everyone and for council. We will have to take it on board and work with the organisations to see who needs the help.
Okay, thank you. Dinnie, you were nodding your head a fair bit during that one.
Oh, it's just good to listen to people's questions, and obviously, you know, I've got a personal interest when it comes to homelessness. So, you know, I think what's really amazing about our community is the amount of community organisations that are out there, that are actually on the front lines, that are doing some incredible work. And in terms of what the council can do, is to align with more of these organisations. And, you know, I've met some amazing people from like Women's Refuge and Salvation Army and all these grassroots organisations, that the people who work in these grassroots organisations, they're weathered. They've seen it all. They've seen the hardships. And when it comes to homelessness, you know, a big portion of that time is actually, it's circumstances that got them there. And, you know, I've always believed that they're not looking for a handout. A lot of them aren't. They're looking for a hand up. And as NPDC, we can be part of that. We can be part of that. And I think aligning with a lot of these organisations that are out there that are doing a lot of good work, collaborate, allow them to educate us in order to move forward. So I think collaboration moving forward with organisations and council is a beautiful way to, a positive step moving forward for us as a community.
Great. So I'm just going to be coming around to kind of the last question straight point. What I'd ask all attendees to do, if possible, is in the chat box, just put in there, what's the one question or the one point that you want the councillors to take away from the conversation today. That would be really helpful for us as we consolidate all of the points coming through. So David, I'll be coming to you first on this, and it's quite a long one, but I want to make sure that I get it across. The Prime Minister is predicting a cold winter for New Zealand. The people that will most feel the cold will be unemployed, the underemployed, the homeless, the poor, those living in unsafe environments, and those facing acute anxiety and stress. These are the very people that so many of our community social service groups have supported on a daily basis. With so many largely voluntary organisations closed or with significantly reduced capacity over the current lockdown, many in need in our community were unable to be supported. In fact, many were unable to be traced. Many of our social service organisations have had to close or have had to survive on significantly reduced resources, financial and personal. There is a clear need for the establishment of a city mission type service in the New Plymouth district to provide a catch-all central coordinating role for many of our current providers of social services targeting those most in need. Such a facility need not be substantial in size, as it is the services provided that matter, not the bricks and mortar. However, much will depend on the number of social services wishing to be associated with such an initiative. The question is not targeted at old people, but at people in need, regardless of age or circumstances. Thoughts?
Well, again, I totally agree with everything. And we've been across this quite a bit over this last hour about the city mission. I think this is maybe the third or fourth time it's come up. And having a city mission and having people in positions to be able to help, and as Dinnie said, help up rather than help out, is really important. I think that the people that are in these positions and that have been struggling, and the question, I guess, is around what we can do. We need to refer back to what we are offering in the COVID response package, and that is that community groups and organisations have the ability to apply for funding to help with them, to help them set themselves back up if they've been struggling over the COVID, or they've had to close, or they're thinking about closing because they're struggling for funds or whatever. This is exactly why we've set up the fund, and this is why exactly we've offered more money with that community funding package. So I really encourage those groups to go to council and apply for some funding so they can then help out those in need.
Fantastic. So just coming around the panelists for final thoughts, what's been your biggest takeaway from the conversation and the questions and comments that have come through? Marie?
I think it comes back to our community being uncertain of what's ahead for all of us. And the Prime Minister has been outlining this for weeks now, and we're only in 2 or 3 days into zero virus numbers. So it will be for all of us a wait and see going forward. With the community funding and looking at a city mission, obviously there's more than one person out there that thinks this is something that we need for our city, and I hope they'll come and have a conversation with council. We need to know from the organisations like the Salvation Army and the women's groups, what is the need for our city in this group, in this area? And obviously, for me personally, it's greater than I know. With heating our houses, I think that that's something that we need to go and see that people are engaging with. That our assisted rate take is taken up, that they can get assistance with their rates, and be aware that this is not a burden on local ratepayers. This amount of money comes from government, and I think that people should take it up if they're finding the going is getting too hard for them. Please come to council. I think the message now from all of us is we need to know what is happening in our community, and that's what these chats are all about. We want to know your opinion on what we're proposing in the short term and what we are working with in the long term. Let's have a good communication going out there with our community.
Fantastic. Just wary of time, so please keep your answers short. Tony, key takeaway for you?
takeaway to me is basically people, the volunteers, the sporting groups, the community groups, the social services groups. That's been loud and strong for me today.
Me too.
3 words I'll give that is facilitate. We need to facilitate, whether you're talking about City Mission or any other community groups. We need to facilitate. We need to work together. We need to resource together. One of the things that surprised me didn't come up today is employment moving forward. I think that's something we need to be acutely aware of, and to remind people that the government on Friday announced $1.6 billion for training to get people into the workforce or get them ready to come back into the workforce. I think in Taranaki we've got, without any shovel-ready projects ready, $500 million worth of construction ready to go. Have we got the capacity to make sure our people are trained and ready to work in those areas and get retrained? So social services, community, volunteers, resource, facilitate, support, and then look at employment opportunities, because that's going to be the long way out.
Great. Thank you, Tony. If I could just alert people just to the chat box, remember to please click on the survey. Also, Lauren's put in there the hotline number as well. Dinnie, literally 10 words or less, key takeaway for you from today's session.
Thank you, Adam. To take away, partnerships with tangata whenua. This is a short-term relief package. Let's get back on our feet. We have to encourage our community to get involved. When we talk about looking after our CBD, make sure we don't forget the likes of Waitara, Oakura, Inglewood, Okato. We make sure they're inclusive in this. And more importantly, it's your feedback that helps us make some better decisions. Kia ora.
Thank you. Last thoughts, David?
I'll keep it very short. Feedback, collaboration, consultation moving forward. We need more of it. Obviously, we need to take advantage of what the council, or the people need to take advantage of what the council have put on the table for this COVID response. And just a reminder that it is, we're after feedback, and these is what we're trying to do in these webinars. So please provide that feedback. They're not set in stone. We're happy to change, manipulate, put in other great ideas that the community have.
Yep. Communication, we're your councillors, you elect us, we're here to listen.
Fantastic. Thank you to all of our councillors today. As noted, please click on the link. Please follow through. Your voice, your opinions are wanted. And on that, I'll end the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ka kite.
Thanks, everyone.